Welcome to The Wing, the emotional and financial health check you never knew you needed.
Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of The Wing. Today we have a guest speaker, and it is Jess Norton, who I promised that I would introduce you to at some stage on the pod. So, hello, Jess.
Hi, what's up? Nice to see your face.
Jess is actually in her bougie office, which she refers to as her wing, and I will explain this in a second, in West Hollywood. So it's about 3 p.m. her time and about 8 a.m. our time. So we're really going international with this one. So I hope you've got your listening ears on. It's going to be a hoot. Now, I do need credit where credit's due. Jess and I have been, we TikTok often, and we're a big fan of voice notes. So, which is sort of what's led us to this conversation, I suppose, but it's certainly what's led me to this podcast. Jess and I were TikToking on a few ideas, and one of them, Jess actually named for me The Wing. I won't bore you with the details on that one just yet, but we will talk about it at some stage. It's an idea for postpartum mums. So it's quite a big project. So instead of just launching straight into that, I launched into the podcast and called it The Wing. So thank you, Jess, for my podcast title.
It's the best. It totally suits you. And, you know, the wing is like your space to have conversations and to do what you want. So it makes total sense.
Love it.
Excited
Love it.
to have
All
a
right. Well,
chat.
let's get into it. So first of all, we're going to get to know Jess, which I think is important. So Jess is a mum. She's got a beautiful little son. And, you know, she's obviously living in LA and living a very fancy life compared to us modest Australians.
I don't know about fancy. I think it's just like the idea of Hollywood seems very fancy, but I think that myself is very scrappy and just making shit happen in a non-flashy way.
Take it.
I'll take it.
All right. So, Jess, if you can tell our listeners a little bit about you pre-baby, a little bit about you pregnant, and a little bit about you postpartum, and then a little bit about you now. So we can break that down. You just go with the flow and start wherever you like.
What a journey. You know, all these different versions that we have of ourselves, you know, around motherhood, before and after and during. This really makes me think. The first one was pre-baby. You know, it's hard to think about that now that I have an 8-month-old son and he is like my entire world. And it's the best thing I've ever done. I feel like I've done some cool things and some hard things, but having a baby was and is the absolute best. But pre-baby, I really feel like I made a strong effort to really eat, pray, love my world. I really romanticized my life. I really lived it to the fullest, and I traveled a lot. I worked a lot, and I also played a lot too. And also, to be honest with you, pre-baby, I mean, I actually didn't know if I was going to ever have a baby. I thought that I would be head of the hot, rich, fun auntie club for life, but now that's transferred over to hot, rich, fun mum club. And that has a lot to do with my partner. I didn't ever have a partner where it was something that I saw in the future for us. But, you know, my partner now is a huge part of that because, you know, it's interesting to me, like pre-baby, people would ask me like, when are you going to have a baby? And it's like, with who? I think that's such an interesting and sort of fucked question, actually, that we asked women, single women. I feel like my grandma was like, when are you going to have some kids of your own? Find a man and have some kids of your own. And it's like, when are you? Like, you know, it's just such a ridiculous question to ask. But I think that is because, like, I've always loved kids and, you know, I just adore my friends' kids. Pre-baby Jess, I really, like I said, just feel like I squeezed all of the juicy parts out of my life before.
Watching you go from, like, to me, you've always been quite aspirational. I'm going to try and tone down the fangirling a little bit, but watching you do exactly that, go and, you know, you moved overseas, you lived overseas, you lived in New York for a while, like LA, like you're very well traveled. You know, you've got property, you've had property since you were quite young. You know, you've had this amazing career. journey that hasn't stopped. And I honestly believe you're probably still just scratching the surface of that. And obviously throwing a little spanner in the works, which is have your baby, is a little bit of a setback for all of us for a period of time. Yeah, I imagine the questions that you were asked, like, in that period of time, and I think you and I are similar. We've sort of gone through, we were both engaged before the relationships that we're in now or before our marriages. That's a whole other section of life that, kind of happened to both of us respectively in our 20s. And then, kind of fall off that cliff after that and go, righto, I'm back to square one again. Like, how am I what's the next move?
Yeah, for sure. We're always shape-shifting. I feel like women are like just incredible shape-shifters and like making the most of all the moments and seasons that life,
Yeah,
presents
absolutely.
to us. So about me pregnant, well, I just became a raging rhino. I feel like I really leaned into that energy though. And when I say raging rhino, I became so big that when I walked through our living room, the TV would shake. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, here's a stampede. Like, and it's just me. So that's really like sums up my whole energy is just a raging rhinoceros. But, I feel like I wish I had a more glamorous pregnancy. I was really, really sick. I feel like I had every symptom that there was, depression, anxiety, pain, lightning crutch, vomiting, nausea. That also did not leave me after the first trimester. I was throwing up until the day that I gave birth. But, I really feel like I leaned into it. I wore a lot of bikinis. I probably offended a lot of older people on the street because I refused to cover the bump. The bump was just like a big shining moon or sun walking down the street. I feel like if I was to cover the bump, just felt like the Michelin Man. So just wanted to let everyone know, like, yes, I am pregnant. There's no need to ask, you can see. But yeah, I do feel like it was not glamorous for me. And I will say that if I was working in a corporate environment, I 100% would have been fired. I could not work or operate on a usual 9 to 5, going to the office, do this. So shout out to my clients and to, everyone that I worked with, my partner as well, for having the grace and the compassion, and me being able to work when I could was really, really core during being pregnant. So yeah, it was definitely not glamorous.
I think your honesty there, Jess, is so important because I think there's a lot of misconception or a lot of fluff when it comes to pregnancy. And it's, we've all got our apps and we're looking at how big the baby is each week and it's all very clean and shiny. But what's really going on and what's really going on behind the Zoom calls or behind, the corporate attire is something that it can be completely physically debilitating. And you're not alone. I remember a friend of mine also telling me, she had that corporate job, 9 to 5 in the public service. She'd drive to work, she'd pull over, she'd throw up on the side of the road, and she'd keep going to work. And I'm the same as you. I think I would have been fired as well because I just could not show up, for as much time as possible. So I think it's so valuable sharing that with, women that are maybe pregnant right now and listening, maybe women that have been through it and felt deflated from their pregnancy journey, like feeling like that really was disappointing. It was actually really difficult. And then thinking about having any future children and thinking, great, now I'm going to go and do all that crap again.
Yeah, for sure. I've made a best friend here who is a mother as well, and our boys are, I think, 8 weeks apart, and we sort of bonded over how miserable we felt. So I think like having an honest discussion with people that are going through the same thing with you is really, really valuable, because every journey is so different. All of my friends in LA before meeting this bestie Maggie were single and wild and free to do whatever they want, and I was like, I am throwing up on the side of the street. I don't want to move from my bed. someone get me a sandwich. Just, I needed to be miserable and discuss that with someone else. And so it is so valuable to have a community of people, or even just one person in my instance, going through the same thing. Because
Absolutely.
it's
And I
tough out
found
there.
as well, like, I'm not like when I was pregnant with our daughter, I feel like I wanted to be like all good, and I wanted to, like, prove to myself and everyone that, oh no, this is a cinch. Like, I can do this. I'm going to do this, 5 more times. And then, you then kind of telling yourself this narrative that, like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. But in hindsight, I look back, I'm like, it was not okay. Like, I was not, like, I had a pretty good pregnancy, but I mean, if I was really, really honest and I was to go back and step into those shoes right now, I guarantee I would not be enjoying things. And I think being able to, like, be honest. And I think
Mm-mm.
that I was probably doing a disservice to my pregnant friends that were also pregnant at the same time of me having an awful time. And I'm trying to put on a happy face because I don't want anyone to worry about me, or I didn't want to get into it because I just didn't feel like talking about how specifically the depression and anxiety side of things. Like, I feel like that for me is just absolutely heightened during pregnancy. And I was thinking about this overnight. Actually, I had a conversation with a GP during this pregnancy, and it was a male GP who I don't usually see. And I flagged it with him. I did the mental health
Mm.
test and did all of that, and, flagged the depression side of things. And he just sort of had no solution. He said, "Oh, look, are you talking to someone?" I said, "Yes, I talk to a psychologist regularly." He's like, "Right. And are you drinking lots of water?" And, and I was like, what are we talking about? Like, how, this isn't, like, this is why I don't want to talk about it, because I feel like, oh, what's the actual solution going to be? So anyway, I'm still digging on that journey, but
Yeah. No, there's a lot of that. They say like everything is normal pretty much. Like you could have a fucking third leg. Yep, that's just a normal part of pregnancy. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, I was having, at one point, I totally forgot about this. I feel like your mind blacks out certain pieces. It felt like my ribs were separating. I was having chest pain, and it was like just this top of the stomach pain. And it was ultimately like just, it was normal, like stretching pains. But having like the validation around that is still difficult to have. Like or to find, I should say. It's 2025 and there's still like a lot of, well, that, not really validating like the experience. I will say that for me, I sought out, healthcare in America is the whole thing, but I sought out specific specialists around physical therapy, and anything I could do to prepare for pregnancy, so that I did have specialists around like pelvic floor stuff that I could speak to, and that they could be like, okay, yep, let's do, an examination, and let's like take a review and actually like really dig in. But you know what? You have to pay for that. It's not like a typical thing. And I wish that it was different. That is sort of
yeah.
how it is. So finding your community, I still feel like, is just such core piece of it. And even if it's just that one person. So
It's a really important message, finding your community. And that was something I'd mentioned earlier as well in a previous episode, was that,
Mm.
I think it takes a small city, like it takes a village to raise a child, but I think it takes a small city to raise women from, school to motherhood, because, our journey just doesn't, it changes and evolves so much throughout, that space of time. And the community
Mm.
needs to change. Like, we need different resources. We don't need as much of our party friends. We need our home mum friends, or we need our pregnant friends, or we don't want to do activities that involve drinking. We need to do something that involves cups of tea. So it's just a whole transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's so transformative. The whole thing is like, I feel like I stepped through a vortex into like another world in a way, particularly like once my son, I delivered my son. I truly was like, what have I just gone through? Like, it's truly wild. But then, postpartum, which there's a lot to say. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of mess, a lot of beauty. It is completely magic and a mess at the same time. And I am still in postpartum now. I really don't believe that that's just 12 weeks. I believe it's more like 12 months for things to, sort of come back to yourself, like hormonally, physically, in every way. I wish that we would stop being or thinking like, oh, at 12 weeks, you're out of postpartum. Absolutely not. So, I have an 8-month-old baby right now, and I still consider myself postpartum in a way too. The question was, tell me about yourself postpartum. The biggest thing for me in postpartum is going through that experience. I feel like I can do anything. I genuinely feel in my heart, I can do anything. After a 3-day labor and 3+ hours of pushing a human into the world, like I've really proved nothing is too much for me to go through. And I've done some tough things before. I would say like moving overseas is a tough thing. I would take some pretty high risks before, if it came to investments or choices that I've made along the way. I consider myself a brave person, but this by far is like the hardest thing that I've done. And being on the other side in postpartum is like, I can literally do anything. So yeah, the toughest and best moment. So sitting in postpartum, I have a lot of gratitude for myself and like what I can go through and the resilience and like the mental toughness that, it took, and physical, to go through that. And yeah, so it was the best marathon to get to here. And yeah, postpartum Jess is just figuring it out. I feel like I do best when I have the most amount of information. So when I was pregnant, I'm like, I am reading all the books, all the podcasts. I'm talking to every single person that is a mum. I want to know birthing stories. I want to know the best and the worst parts of it so that I can take all of that data and be like, okay, it's going to land somewhere in between here. Like, I have an idea of what's to come. But I will say that some parts of postpartum you can't be prepared for until you're in it.
I've read or heard that you're right that the postpartum period doesn't just end at that 12-week mark. Like, right, okay, you've had your baby, you've had 12 weeks to sort of rest and lay about and learn how to feed and learn the sleep routine and all of that. But then it actually can last up to 2 years. It's the recovery period is just it's a long time. And you mentioned the word marathon as well. Apparently being pregnant is like running a marathon every day. So that's something I like to remind Jake of. When he gets home and tells me he's tired, I'm like,
Yeah.
did you do a marathon too?
Katey, men could never like love the men in my life, but you could never.
No, and you know what? I think they know. Like, I think the amount of complaining, the amount of like menti bees, I think I told you about my meltdown when I screamed in the fridge to myself. I opened the fridge doors and I was like in there because I couldn't get the anger energy out of me. I think witnessing all of those things, I think Jake is aware that, it's a big thing. Yes. Embrace the rage.
Embrace the rage, babe. Embrace the rage.
Oh, that's going to be another whole episode, actually. We're going to talk about rage ironing, rage cleaning, just rage everything. I think I just did everything in an angry state. It was just hectic.
Mm. Mm-hmm. It is hectic.
That's right. All right. So now I want to hear this from you because I just feel like so we got some more topics and I feel like this is going to be juicy. During pregnancy, what were the most unhelpful, or pregnancy and birth, what were the most unhelpful comments? And if you could pinpoint which ones were the worst?
Which ones are the worst? I'm trying to think because they were all quite horrific. People said a lot. One that was very common for me in pregnancy, which was like, "Oh, you're all belly." Okay.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Yes, I'm just belly out. I'm just a belly out in the world. I did Pilates, reformer Pilates throughout my pregnancy, and I had this one instructor, which, I don't think she meant it by being malicious, but she would just constantly comment on my size. She was like, "You're going to have a big baby with that big belly." And just like, as I'm fucking balancing, barely balancing as it is, like trying to do a lunge with like, it was a big belly, like, I have a big baby, but, just the The commentary while I'm like trying to do a pose was definitely not needed. And unhelpful, which, to answer your question, that was one of them. Two comments really stand out for me. Number one was from the car wash man. So I was I was going to go get my car washed, and it's one of those ones that you drive through. And, look, I'll give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt, but I could barely reach the steering wheel with my belly. It would touch sort of just the top of the steering wheel. And I didn't actually think that you could see from outside the car that I had a giant belly, but apparently you could. And, I'm driving up and it's my turn next. And this man who's like ushering all the cars to go through the car wash, like the one that, is quite scary that you just drive through. He's going like this. He's saying, wind your window down and like making that action to me. And I'm thinking, oh, what have I done? And this is my first time doing a car wash in LA. Like I've probably driven over the wrong thing. But no, he asked me to put the window down before going through the car wash. Here's me thinking I've done something wrong. And he goes, I just want to ask you, miss, you have one or two babies in there? One or two? Just have one, sir. I just have one baby in here. And I put the window up. Like, are you fucking serious? You asked me to put the window down, stop me from getting my car washed to ask if I have one or two babies in my belly. Like, that's your business. There was that one, which was pretty horrific because then I just had to sit in the car wash for 14 minutes thinking, okay, great. And then another time I was getting a pregnancy massage, which, it's in the name. I'm going in because I'm pregnant. And this woman was adamant. A lot of people were adamant and just wanted to check that there was only one baby inside my belly. So this is the second one where she's saying, 2 babies? You have 2 babies in there. I'm like, no, just one. And she was like, no. I was like, 1 baby. Yes. Like I don't know my own body. Like I've never gotten an ultrasound. And this was at, I think, 5 months pregnant. So, I wasn't even that close to giving birth. So she was also adamant that there was 2 babies in there. So very unhelpful when people would sort of ask me if there was 1 or 2 because of, I'm guessing, my size. But yeah, those are probably the 2 worst ones because it's like I'm going into the car wash for 14 minutes of peace and I'm also going into this massage for 90 minutes of peace. And also that lady did pray over my stomach for a girl next time. So that was also unhelpful. Because she asked me the gender and I said it's a boy, and then she decided to think it was appropriate. It was a good massage, I'll give her that. She did give a good physical experience, but I was just like, wow, the audacity.
The comments are bigger the worse. I got one of those from my friend's husband. He was coming to do some plumbing and I opened the front door and he goes, oh, geez, you're about to pop.
You're about to pop. I got that when I was 6 months pregnant and I said, not even close. Not even close. Not even close.
Oh, I know all the ones on the flip side, but they're like, oh, you don't even look pregnant. Like at the very start, when you probably don't actually look pregnant, you just sort of look normal. You don't even look pregnant, and then you start going into a spiral like, oh, the baby's not growing enough. Oh, it's like, oh, I'm not eating the right things. Oh no, what if the baby isn't big enough? Like what? It's just, I don't know. The comments, like,
really, truly horrible both ways. But, I can't relate to that because I feel like I looked pregnant 4 days into being pregnant. So actually my friends guessed that I was pregnant based off my face. So that was apparently a giveaway.
now probably still on the topic of comments and opinions of others. This section's called Guns and Guts, how we need to stick to them when we get bombarded with comments and opinions that aren't ours, and how to handle outside opinions, commentary, or unwelcome feedback. Now, Jess, if you have some insight or advice, or perhaps a situation that you'd been through that you would be comfortable sharing that might be helpful in terms of how to combat those comments, like whether it's a family member or a friend, or I've mentioned in the past I had gestational diabetes with both babies. I'm yet to find out if I have it again this time. And one of the most unhelpful things that was said to me was, in comparison to somebody else, was that she couldn't have had gestational diabetes because she wasn't overweight and she didn't eat bad. And to me, I was like, all right, so you've just basically said that about me. So thanks so much. So in that moment,
Right.
I wasn't, yeah, thanks. In that moment, I wasn't able to say anything or like combat that comment because I just, firstly, it was extremely incorrect. Secondly, it really hurt, but like just not being quick enough in those moments. And then obviously a lot of us, we sort of go away and we stew on it and we think about it and we think, how could we have dealt with that differently? Anyway, if you have a situation that you're willing to share, please
Yeah.
share.
Feel like there was just a lot of situations where, people would say really unhelpful comments or, feedback that it wasn't feedback because I never asked for it, right? So I feel like I have a really good one-liner, which, if someone's saying something inappropriate to you, I think really putting that back onto the person so that you don't feel any sort of shame or shyness or any sort of way is like my best piece of advice for combating that. And my one-liner is, I'm surprised you're comfortable asking me that. Because then it's like, oh, you're actually, and you can say it kind, like if someone's saying something super whack to you, you can just be like, oh, I'm surprised that you're comfortable asking me that. And then it actually just makes them think, and you'll probably get like some sort of an apology. So that was my number one-liner. If someone was saying
Love it.
something absurd to me, or if there was like a mean comment or something where it was like incorrect, like your story that you just shared. I think just giving, saying exactly what it is, like, well, that's an unkind comment. There's a way that you can be quite loving in saying things, but you're also not taking any bullshit or you're not taking on board what people are saying to you by saying like, I'm surprised you're comfortable saying that, or that's an unkind comment. Just bringing to light exactly what
Absolutely,
it is
and the
with a
tone of
smile on your
voice, like
face.
you're not saying anything nasty there, and you're sticking to your guns about it, and it's and that awareness piece, and it's usually coming from someone that might be, you start realizing more things about that person. You're like, right, okay, so they're not very self-aware. There's obviously, some projection in there. Like, yep, absolutely. Like, you can start to pull it apart. And for those of us that have been in some sort of therapy or speaking with psychologists or mental health professionals, it stands out to us like a sore thumb because we're like, okay, well, it's very much about that person rather than it is about me, but it doesn't take away the fact that those comments can really cut. So I think those are great. Though if you haven't written those down, ladies, do it now, pop them in your notes. And if you're going into a situation where you think, oh, gosh, we're going to see, judgy Aunt Sharon today, so I'm sure she's got something to say about my pregnancy or about the way I'm parenting, having those little combat methods up your sleeve is perhaps a good way to go in. That's not that you're going in combatively, but you're going in with a bit of a protection method. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it sort of dismantles like the whole situation by just being like, you're sort of reflecting back to them by saying that. And I'm surprised you're comfortable asking me that really works for a lot of situations. Like even, people would ask me about what I'm thinking, how much maternity leave I'm going to take or, just things that number one, I actually was unsure of, but were deeply personal as well. So
I actually started noting down a few that had come to me because I thought I need to write these down and get them out of my head and my body and my energy because it was just too much. So here are some. So, God, you must be looking forward to just having the baby here. I'm like, okay, that implies a lot of things. Are you so nervous about
yeah.
having 2 under 2? I'm like, okay, so it's the implications of that I'm not capable is just written all over that
Gosh.
one. When are you going back to work? Yeah, same as what you said.
When are you minding your business?
Totally. How's Jake going? That one really used to grind my gears.
That I feel like that's a big
Mm,
Australian one. That is, yeah, I got that from
yeah.
a lot of Aussie people actually. How are they all doing? Nothing's changing for him.
He didn't push a
He's
baby
great.
out of anywhere.
Yeah,
Oh, this one,
yeah,
actually, you reminded me of this one. Oh, this is a goodie. Oh, this must be your first baby. Is this baby number 1?
yeah. First baby. People would say like that. First baby, and like eyebrows raised. And I'm like, are people saying that to me because I couldn't possibly the way I look is just so beautiful and refreshed and young that there's no way I could have another kid. Is that the only reason that people are assuming first baby? Like, I cannot think of another reason. Is it? I truly can't. So that's what I'm telling myself when people would say that to me, which that one was, yeah, you're bringing back a lot of memories for me. Thank you, Katey.
I know us as postpartum women have just buried these deep, deep, deep down, but we're bringing them out today for a little play. Oh, yep. Wow, you're so big. We've covered that one. That's a cracker. I have recorded an episode on bottle feeding versus breastfeeding, so this is relative to that. But I got a lot of comments around this, like, oh, wow, I need to learn how to make a bottle to feed. Like it was the tone of voice for me in those situations, or comments in the background. You're thinking of not breastfeeding. Wasn't thinking about it. I've decided it's not happening. But yeah.
It truly is wild that as women, we're going to be judged no matter what the decision, honestly. So it's unfortunate, but I think that when people are deciding to judge you, like that's not shame that you should hold. It's actually shame that you should give back.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Now, just some more questions for you. So managing, this is a big topic in the postpartum period, managing the help. So now that's probably a poor choice of words on my behalf, but we're talking about family, friends, husband, any, whoever is in the situation with you, managing those people in your community, the challenges, the benefits, and any relatable chit chat you have on that topic.
I was a little naive around this. I've heard like it takes a village, and I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm like hyper independent though to a fault. So that I didn't feel that until it really happened, until I was there, until I was like, oh yeah, like I can't, and I had no real complications after giving birth and still was like, bed resting. I didn't really understand what that would mean without being there. And so I live in LA and my family is in Australia. My mum did come over when my son was born and then another time as well. But our help and our village and support system was a lot of a paid support village, with nannies and caretakers and things like that, because you can't do everything yourself. Like that is just not it's not doable, period, end of story. And I do feel like I overextended myself postpartum in two ways. I think and I learned from that very quickly, like, okay, I can't do that, and that's all a part of the journey. I overextended myself in going back to the gym in the way I was exercising before I was pregnant. So I was like, I'm ready to get back into my HIIT training, and then ultimately my body needed to heal more, and I got a pretty bad back injury with a perforated T4, T5, and then was having trouble lifting my kid. And having chronic back pain for a couple of months was gnarly. So that was the outcome of that, and just managing like, okay, I do need help in these areas. What does that look like? Just having that realization that like there's no shame in asking for help. I think, like I said, I am and have been hyper independent. So it was a real shift for me to be able to think around how to manage those pieces. I also did the same thing with work. I mean, I think I have done a lot of work on myself on like my identity is not just my career. I feel like I had done a lot of work on that, but then I was also excited to get back into work, and I took on too much initially for what I could actually do. I went back to work like fairly soon, and it was during the time that my baby was still, the potato phase where they're not crawling around, they're not on the move. And so you're like, okay, great. They're napping for a couple of hours during the day. And so like I can actually go ahead and do things and pull my laptop out and be creative and do these things. But with time, your baby is also growing and on the move and learning to crawl and learning to stand and walk, and requires more eyeballs and more physical focus. And so I had said yes to a lot of work with my clients, and then was like, okay, I can't do this. And having that realization that like, okay, I'm going to have to hire some format of childcare that works for me. And I have to be intentional. There was a season of my life where I would take on any and anything that came toward me, like 17 different clients, different industries, different goals, different requirements, right? There is no way that I could or would want to do that now for this season of life. I only want to do things where I'm aligned with what that client is doing and it feels good to do that work with that person, because really my number one priority right now in this season is spending time with my family and, watching and helping my baby grow and navigate through his life. So, if I'm not in a position where I have to say yes to everything, and that's a-okay. It has been a challenge to find what format of childcare do I need. Finding the right person is very difficult, but I think I've finally gotten into a way better flow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, managing that new sort of transition of your life and making it work for you, like the way that you look through a different lens and you're making decisions in a different light. You're not just saying yes to everything, because what you say yes to heavily impacts not just you, but it impacts your husband and your son and, the people around you. Like, you've really, as the mum, you're the glue of the household that needs to, like, your decisions impact heavily those, in your immediate orbit. So yeah, being really selective, I think, is important, but not feeling bad about it. Like you said, I can certainly relate to that. Like, saying no to things and then getting a heap of guilt, thinking, oh, I don't want to let that person down. But then when your mindset shifts and you think, no, the only person I'm letting down is myself or my baby, well, then decisions become easier to make because those are the non-negotiables.
Exactly. And I mean, since becoming a mum, I thought I was efficient before. The things I can achieve in a 45-minute afternoon nap, my gosh, like it's just on another level. So, yeah, it just becoming a mother is like you become way more intentional and way more efficient. And yeah, it's a real boot camp in that way.
Sorry, I'm just waiting for my friend to relocate. Mummy's working, sweetie.
We're working moms. That's why I have my little wing here, because it's like I can't concentrate. And then also he'll hear my voice and he's like, I want my mom. So it's like, I just actually have to go and go to my
Physically
little
be in a
office
different
and do
space.
my thing
Yeah, well,
there.
that's why I've got these noise cancelling headphones on, because what I was finding is when I was working or in meetings or whatever, without them, I can hear the kids downstairs, like with the nanny or with my mum or with Jake or whatever. And it's like yesterday, I found myself just like constantly taking them off because I was like, that cry has been going on for too long. Like, I need to just go and check. Like, it really is
Right.
distracting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're just like, but it's literally our biological job is to make sure that our babies are okay. So what's happening is very normal, and it's almost like the opposite to not follow your instinct of like when your baby's making a sound.
Yeah,
So yeah,
totally.
I feel you on that. Sure.
Another question. Visiting and venting. What should be the visiting rules when visiting new mums, and any experiences that you've had with people coming to see you particularly in that postpartum period and that inside of that first 12 weeks, but also beyond that?
Yeah. My advice is to always trust your gut. First of all, like if you feel like you don't want visitors and that's like your request and your preference, then that's your preference and that's your prerogative. Like you should be empowered to actually make those choices and set those boundaries in postpartum, around visiting, around who you want to be around. And I do think that it's wildly personal. I have a friend who wanted everyone they knew around to be in the hospital from when the baby was born. For me, that's my worst fucking nightmare. And I, in fact, didn't want anybody around. I just wanted to be in the bubble and to be having that option of having no one around and inviting people over when I was ready. That was my request. So I think that my advice is to trust your gut and set your own personal boundaries. I don't think that there's me telling you how to do something is just not how I sort of want to set the stage for that. I did have a little bit of disappointment around when I started to invite visitors, and I wasn't sure if it was cultural. I live in a different country. America is very different to Australia, but some people came empty-handed, and to me, that was not okay for me, because like I said, I had no real complications with my birth. And even then, I'm not able to stand and serve a cup of tea or make a cup of coffee. Like, if you're going to come over, bring something or bring an impeccable vibe. Okay. Or else don't come, because postpartum is like I said, mess and magic and chaos, and you want calm as well. So if you're going to visit someone in postpartum, or you're visiting a new mom, like, their whole world is shaken up. So like, the least you can do is bring a meal, or like, you don't even need to buy a gift for the baby, but just make a meal. If you're already cooking for yourself, like, cook for a mom, because she's unable to really take care of herself in the way that she used to. So there was like a couple moments where I was a little bit let down, around not receiving certain things from certain people. We'll keep it ambiguous. But it is wild. It's very wildly personal how you want that to look for yourself in postpartum. I had my son in the flu season, so it was just important for me to protect him from sickness with visitors, and the wild card of that. Definitely don't visit a baby or any new mums, or really any family, if you're sick. Like, I feel like that is really something actually that everyone can apply. If you are unwell, or even if you have a sniffle, like, new babies don't have an immune system, so just don't go. Like, you can see them later. I think that's probably my number one rule for everyone. If I can give a rule, or give a wake up call, if you will, to people, just don't come. It's actually a gift for you not to come if you're feeling unwell. That's actually helping me protect my newborn and my baby. And also, if you're coming to visit, like I said, impeccable vibes only. We don't want to hear about like so-and-so down the road, like a bitchy moment. Like, hold that for this precious time, and only come with positivity, really, because it is just like your whole world has been shaken up. So impeccable vibes, or do not come.
I think as well, like, maybe we can talk a little bit more about the boundaries piece. So something that I think I struggle with is,
Yeah.
and anyone who has set a boundary will understand what that is like. So you might set like a situational boundary whereby it's okay, well, I'll catch up with this person, but it will be for a walk, so that it's got a location, it's got a start and end time. You can both leave the situation. Like, that sounds terrible, but it's like it's a situational boundary. Or you could put up a physical boundary where you lock your front door, or you lock your front gate, or you and I think that I may have been guilty of this, but no, we actually lock our front gate now as a habit.
We're not home, but we actually are.
Exactly.
We're not
Exactly.
home,
I'm not here.
but I am.
But all your lights are on. Yeah, like, those physical boundaries that sort of like, kind of need to be in place sometimes to manage that flow. Or an emotional boundary,
Yeah.
emotional or verbal boundary, where you sort of actually say to someone, I'm just really struggling at the moment, and I'm just not up to seeing anybody for, a few more weeks. I'll reach out to you when I'm ready. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for checking in, but, I'm just not there yet. So those are some examples of different boundary setting. But just from your perspective, do you have some tips or tricks on how to set those boundaries? And it probably differs depending on who you're talking to. If it's your mum, for example, it'd be different to your mother-in-law, or to even with your husband, or your friend that has a lot of kids, or someone that works in a daycare center and wants to come and
Yeah.
visit during flu season. So yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, I think that the best thing on setting a boundary is also setting a clear expectation from that person ahead of time, so that there's no surprises. I feel like what I did was I sent around for family visiting is, here's our baby rules. You have to wash your hands. You can't come unless you've been vaccinated, or if you're showing zero signs of being unwell. And I actually sent out like a graphic, like, these are our rules for our baby. And, people they literally had a guide, a checklist, if you will, so that they knew, like, okay, cool, these are the boundaries in place. So setting a boundary, has to have an outcome to that, or else it's just a wish, right? Like, oh, I wish that you would do this, but it's like, no, well, if you don't have X, Y, and Z things done, then you can't come visit. It's not just like, oh, a wishy-washy wish. It's like that's the outcome, right? And then I think like it does differ with who you're talking to. Emotionally, I feel like a lot of people were checking in with me, but I didn't have my usual like lengthy response or whatever, because I was just trying to like have that time with my family, my new family. So yeah, I think just having an expectation set on the upfront really helps you arm yourself with like, okay, these are the boundaries. You've already pre-thought about it. And I like what you said about having a time limit on an interaction. I think that that's, you're not abandoning your own needs by, having someone overstay, for example. I think I did that. I need to think back to, it actually doesn't even matter who it was, but to stop people from overstaying, I would say like, okay, yeah, we're open for a visit from this time to this time. And there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like if someone's taking offense to that, that person probably doesn't need to be around. That person probably doesn't understand you, honestly. But I feel like I didn't have like any major oversteps because I did set the boundaries and I did set the expectations. That was like on visiting, baby. As time goes on, also you find that like your request and your boundaries may change, right? So for me, like seeing how I wanted my baby to be swaddled, for example, I wanted things this specific way. And if someone was like, say, for example, covering my baby with a blanket that wasn't tight, that's not how I wanted to have that be done because of, the guidelines in which I was adhering to for baby safety. And so I was just always very verbal, very upfront. I didn't feel like me telling someone, hey, this is how I want things around my baby. I didn't feel bad about that because it's actually our job as mothers to protect our babies. I don't feel like I had like mum guilt around setting boundaries because I was like, well, I'm his most, I'm a fierce protector of my child. So it is how it is.
I remember a situation where I had a visitor, and again, doesn't matter, but it's someone I'm no longer in contact with, and I wasn't in a lot of contact with at the time, but I sort of welcomed that visit because they insisted and they had a gift, and I felt bad and I felt like I had to impress that person. I remember I was so uncomfortable with them being here. I had our daughter in my carrier and I was sitting down on the couch while she slept on me, which is obviously, all you mums know that that's a very sacred time where your baby's sleeping, so you can be sleeping or you could be doing stuff that you need to do or just go have a drink of water or something. And then the story went on to a stage where she started talking about her life story, and I said, oh, it's like, oh, okay, and I was trying to diffuse this situation. I just could not get out of this conversation. Obviously I can't leave because it's at my house. And then she stopped and she said,
Right.
haven't I told you my life story? And I stupidly said, no. And she literally went on to tell me that story. So I think it was from that moment that I was like, right, I need to really trim down who we're letting in because I
Yeah.
just don't have the mental capacity to be having these types of conversations when my baby's obviously small enough to still be in a carrier. I don't remember how old she was. She would have been, 2 or 3 months old. And because I didn't want her to be held by this visitor, because then I thought, then I'm never going to get rid of her. And I miss out on enjoying that cuddle. And I think too, I'm curious as well, when somebody doesn't respect your boundaries, do you have a default, or like in that, do you deal with it in that moment? Is it something you deal with afterwards? Like, I guess maybe you haven't needed to deal with it because you've set those expectations nice and early and given time limits and been really clear on that, which I think is extremely valuable.
I do feel like I did my best to like set some boundaries up front. Some things slipped through the cracks. I think my default is and was anger, postpartum rage. I had pregnancy rage and postpartum rage. Just the rhinoceros continues, really. That's a tough one because you need to think about like there on the spot. It just totally depends. It totally depends. Like if it's family, I feel like I have a partner that I was able to really riff with on like, okay, this thing happened. I was uncomfortable. How can you support me as my teammate around this creation so that it never happens again? I think like I really leaned on my partner for that to help me because I'm just one person. And I do feel like I'm so lucky I have a very supportive partner, and he was able to communicate like on my behalf actually in a couple of instances, which was nice. So yeah, I think that's really what I did initially get angry right away. But then, in discussing with my partner, like, how can we stop this from being something that continues? I'm really lucky to have that person in my corner.
Whether it's your partner, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a parent, or even a friend. Like if you need help setting the boundaries or maintaining
Yeah.
the boundaries and making it clear so that situations don't keep repeating themselves, or, taking yourself off site, like having somebody there that can sort of, have a little whisper in the relevant party's ear to just kind of nudge them in the right direction. Because a lot of the time, the people that are in your network are not actually trying to do anything malicious or trying to get in your way. They just literally want to come and see your new baby and see you and assess the situation, make sure everything's okay, and and hear about it. Like, it comes from a good place. But when you're in that state of mind, it can really just go the opposite way, and you end up, I was the same as you. I feel like I was just find myself sitting there getting really, really frustrated or really, really angry that the situation wasn't wrapping up and there was nothing I could do to get out of it. And no matter how many times you signal, like, you're sort of like, all right, well, I'm just going to go pop her down now so that, we can both have a rest. Like, sometimes that doesn't work.
I think the message that, like, in the conversation that we're having is actually maybe less so for mums to do something, but maybe for everyone else. Maybe for everyone else, if like you're visiting a new mom and a new baby, like, just be hyper aware to the situation. And, you may not be able to put yourself exactly into their shoes, but, I feel like there needs to be a book, Visiting Newborns for Dummies, like just how to actually act around these situations. And I think that, also generations have changed where like that looks really different. Like, I remember having a discussion with my friend here, and she's like, "Well, you don't want visitors," like, was sort of shocked. And I was like, "No." And she's like, "Oh, like when I was growing up, everyone came over." And I was like, "Sure, like that may have been the case for sure. This is just, my preference over something that I have agency and authority over." So that's how I'd like it.
Question for you: how the list that you created, because I've heard of families doing this, with the list that you created that was kind of like your how to, like, work with us here, how to visit,
Out of it.
visiting for dummies. Here's your little checklist. Here's your welcome pack. How was that received by friends and family?
Yeah, really well. I'm just trying to remember if there was like any bad responses. And in fact, I had some friends. I have the best friends, seriously, and you're included in that, Katey. But I feel like I have such amazing friends and family, like it was pretty much respected. And in fact, sometimes my friends would make a plan. They'd be like, "We're so excited to come over, meet baby. We're bringing XYZ." There was a set plan. And then sometimes shit hits the fan. Someone got sick and was like, "Hey, I've been on a flight and I have a sniffly nose. Like, I don't think I should come over." And actually, that's a gift. That is a gift for you to not come over. Don't worry about your actual present. Like, it's a gift for you not to bring sickness into the house. And so thank you for, being mindful and thoughtful. So I feel like I had a really good response from friends, and I feel like they were probably extra cautious. I had a real fear of like my baby getting sick because flu season was really gnarly in LA. So a good response, I think, overall. Yeah, the message is really just other people try and be aware of like this time being so precious. Like, time is so, so precious that, like, the newborn phase particularly, like, gone just so quick. So it's really just about preserving that time in the way that you want it to look and feel for yourself and for your family.
Yep, absolutely. No, I think well said. And there's some great tips and some great dialogue and some great thinking, obviously from a first-hand experience, Jess, with you and your transition through pregnancy and motherhood, and obviously into the postpartum period. So I think that hopefully our listeners have many things to take away. So let's thank our guest, Jess Norton, for joining us all the way from LA and for providing insightful insights on her journey from pre-motherhood, through the postpartum period. We have plenty more to cover with Jess, and we will do subsequent pods together. We haven't even scratched the surface. As I mentioned a little earlier in this podcast, Jess is an experienced investor, and she's got a lot to share on the financial side of things, particularly in the property space. We're going to talk about crypto. We're going to talk about the share market, and Jess is going to share some of her insights, her learnings, and her knowledge on those varying topics. But for now, we'll let Jess get back to her LA lifestyle. And thank you so much for joining us, Jess. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Katey. You're the best, and look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks, ladies. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and follow, and we'll post our next episode very soon.